This is the mop-up for June 8th, 2023. We got a lot to go over. Mike Parson, the Republican governor of Missouri, signed into law on Wednesday a statewide ban on transgender girls playing in girls' sports, as well as making it illegal for Missouri doctors to provide transgender medical care for minors. Did I mention he's a Republican? We now enter the third day of a national state of emergency for America's LGBTQ community. This is a national state of emergency for America's LGBTQ community. It was declared by Human Rights Campaign. It's the largest LGBTQ lobbying organization in America. They've been around since 1980. They've seen it all. This is the first time they've ever declared a national state of emergency for America's LGBTQ community. If you remember, on Tuesday, for the first time ever, Human Rights Campaign issued a national state of emergency saying it is no longer safe for members of the LGBTQ community here in America because Republicans, specifically Republicans, have succeeded in passing 75 anti-LGBTQ laws in state legislatures this year alone. 75 anti-LGBTQ laws passed this year alone. Gay pride parades scheduled for June have been canceled throughout Florida for fear of being arrested by police for violating anti-drag queen laws that were recently passed. Gay pride parades are being canceled out of fear that right-wing extremist groups like the Proud Boys might show up and bring violence. This hate, this persecution, this national state of emergency is due to Republican politicians who offer voters nothing other than demonizing the most vulnerable members of our community. For example, conservative Christians have called for a boycott of Target after the chain store began selling gay pride merchandise. Target caved and removed some of the items off the shelves out of fear for the safety of their own employees. Here is the vulgar South Dakota Republican Governor Kristi Noem on Fox News Wednesday morning, going after Target and terrorizing the LGBTQ community.
It's dangerous, and Steve, I'll tell you, I'm like a lot of Americans, love to shop at Target. I mean, we do, but we just can't anymore. And while the rest of the country is worried about, having fun and going out and shopping and enjoying a store, that store is fundamentally tearing down this country. And we have to have real conversations about how serious we are about protecting our freedom.
Protecting your freedom because Target is selling gay pride merchandise. It's not just the laws that make the lives of the LGBTQ community miserable. It's not just the laws. This gives license to violent people to hurt the most vulnerable members of our society. There are reports that Jack Smith, the special counsel looking into Donald Trump's criminal activity, has told the former president's lawyers that he should expect to be indicted as early as today. By the time you hear this on Thursday, an indictment may have already been handed down by one of the two grand juries Jack Smith has convened. One is in Florida, looking into Trump's mishandling of classified material, and another one is in Washington, D.C., looking into Trump's efforts to steal the 2020 election. That Washington, D.C. grand jury is also looking into Trump's mishandling of classified documents. I'll have more on that momentarily. Comedic actor Jay Johnston has been arrested for the role he played in January 6. Personally, I think he should be arrested for the role he played in Bob's Burgers or Arrested Development, for a matter of, he was in Arrested Development. How ironic. Johnston played Sarah Silverman's police officer boyfriend on our Comedy Central series. He appeared in the movie Anchorman and was a regular, as I mentioned, on Bob's Burgers until he was banned from the show last year when it became apparent he had participated in the January 6 riots. Johnston is charged with attacking police officers in one of the tunnels leading into the Capitol on January 6. A GOP donor who runs one of the largest funeral parlors in New York was arrested for the role he played on January 6. Peter Maloney has been charged with assaulting a police officer and a member of the media with cans of, cans of insect repellent. That's rough on the eyes, as is the smoke from Canadian wildfires blanketing parts of the Northeast. New York's air quality, however, some good news. It was upgraded early this morning to AS. It's improving. There are reports that New York City air is now the worst in the world. And it's even worse, believe it or not, than it was on September 11th. They're saying the air quality is worse than it was on September 11th, and even more surprisingly, even worse than the night Ted Nugent played Madison Square Garden. More on the air quality in a few minutes. The chairman of CNN, Chris Licht, has been licked. After a year of firings, cutbacks, and wooing fascists like Donald Trump to come on the network, Chris Licht was jettisoned after he had reportedly lost the confidence of his newsroom. Tucker Carlson launched a new show on Twitter, but Fox News is now suing him, accusing Tucker Carlson of breach of contract. He's still under contract with Fox News. Meanwhile, on a CNN town hall Wednesday night, presidential candidate Mike Pence said Donald Trump should never be president again. But he added, if he got the Republican nomination, I would support him. What a man, huh? What a spine. Well, asked if he would consider pardoning any of the January 6 rioters who came to hang him that day, Mike Pence, to his credit, said absolutely not. This runs counter to what Ron DeSantis said when he was asked the same question. He said he might consider issuing pardons for the men and women who participated in the January 6 insurrection. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has asked for a delay in the court's annual financial disclosures, which are due this week. Thomas has come under criticism and scrutiny for failing to reveal the hundreds of thousands of dollars in free vacations provided to him by right-wing billionaire Harlan Crow. Pope Francis is back in a Rome hospital tonight, recovering from intestinal surgery after doctors operated to remove a hernia. The 86-year-old Pope is reportedly resting well with no complications. This is his second hospital stay in roughly 2 months. Pope Francis is reportedly alert and joking with his grandchildren. Pope Francis's eldest daughter, Yetta Francis, said Father's Day is coming a little bit earlier this year. Yetta Francis, Pope Francis's oldest daughter. Puerto Rico is a neglected American colony that was abandoned by the Trump administration after Hurricane Maria killed close to 3,000 residents of Puerto Rico back in 2017. Puerto Rico has yet to recover. This week, temperatures on the heat index reached as high as 125 degrees. The heat index measures how hot temperatures feel on the human body and often run higher than the actual temperature, thanks to ExxonMobil. Thanks to ExxonMobil, the heat index in Puerto Rico this week reached 125 degrees. Thank you, ExxonMobil. And this, of course, brings us to New York City, which this morning has the worst air quality in the world, and that doesn't count the Ralph Lauren perfume counter at Macy's. The skies were a hazy orange, looking like one of Donald Trump's sneezes. For the first time in recent memory, the Statue of Liberty was barely visible from Staten Island, but considering that Staten Island is the only borough in New York City that voted for Trump, it's probably a good thing that they can't see the Statue of Liberty. I would assume the people of Staten Island consider the Statue of Liberty to be an eyesore. Libraries and zoos closed early, beaches were empty, and while schools remained in session, children were forbidden from going outside. The governor of New York warned air quality could get even worse this week, as the emergency is expected to extend until the weekend. 10 minutes into the Wednesday matinee of Broadway's Prima Facie, the play had to be stopped on account of the lead actress saying she couldn't breathe. The play then resumed with an understudy. The smoke has drifted down to Washington, D.C. with air so thick, Mitch McConnell and Joe Manchin couldn't read the fire hose of checks they receive each day from coal companies. Why is this happening? Well, because smoke from 250 Canadian wildfires has drifted south. It is believed that breathing in the air in New York City right now is equivalent to smoking 6 cigarettes a day. 6 cigarettes. Thanks, Canada. Can't you burn some nicotine trees so we can at least get some kind of heady jolt from the smoke? Long-term exposure to this type of smoke is said to cause dementia and lower IQs, which should guarantee Republican control of the House and probably the Senate for the foreseeable future. So what's really causing the wildfires? ExxonMobil is what's causing the wildfires. We're burning fossil fuels. That heats up the planet, which is why Canada had a dry spring and very little snow in the winter. The woods in Canada are kindling, waiting for a spark. Why? Because it's America that won't get off fossil fuels. Who specifically is to blame for all this? Well, ExxonMobil. You want names? I'm going to give you names. These are the people who are destroying our planet. If you cannot breathe today, it is Joe Manchin's fault, the Democrat from West Virginia, Senator Joe Manchin, who takes more money from the fossil fuel industry than any other politician in America. It is the fault of Warren Buffett, beloved billionaire Warren Buffett, folksy, homespun Warren Buffett, who owns 24% of Occidental Petroleum. Lovely, adorable Warren Buffett, who holds the second largest block of shares in Chevron. He owns nearly $22 billion worth of stock in Chevron. It is the fault of Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. JP Morgan Chase, which has invested $317 billion in fossil fuels since the Paris Agreement was adopted in 2015. That's 33% more than any other bank. Jamie Dimon, largest investor in fossil fuels, $317 billion since the Paris Accords. Jamie Dimon, was asked last year by Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib during congressional testimony. Last year, she asked him whether he felt an obligation to divest his company from investments in oil companies. Here is Jamie Dimon's response.
Well, I would like to ask all of you and go down the list, because again, you all have agreed to doing this. Please answer with a simple yes or no. Does your bank have a policy against funding new oil and gas products? Mr. Dimon.
Absolutely not, and that would be the road to hell for America.
Right, and this isn't the road to hell. Have you looked out the window, you arrogant prick? This is the face of death. Right there, JP Morgan Chase's Jamie Dimon. It's hard to believe that when Jamie Dimon financed Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking of underage girls, that was the least of Jamie Dimon's crimes. He launders money for Russian oligarchs, drug kingpins, and he finances the destruction of our planet. And he says it's the road to hell to get off fossil fuels. We're already in hell. Look out the window, Jamie Dimon, you arrogant, murderous prick. Who else is to blame for your impending emphysema? Darren Woods, the ExxonMobil CEO, who funds phony scientific organizations and think tanks like the American Petroleum Institute, which is paid to deny the link between climate change and fossil fuels. Darren Woods, know the name, know these people. They are murdering our planet. Darren Woods, CEO of ExxonMobil. Darren Woods, CEO of ExxonMobil. He was accused back in 2021 of lying before the House Oversight Committee when he testified that ExxonMobil didn't cover up its own scientific findings from 40 years ago that fossil fuels were destroying the planet. He's like the tobacco executives who knew cigarettes caused lung cancer years and years before the medical community did. He kept his mouth shut. ExxonMobil knew it was heating up the planet as far back as the 1950s, but it kept on drilling. It kept on drilling. He is murdering us. He is a murderer. Call these people what they are. They are murdering the planet in the name of mammon. Mike Wirth, planet killer. Mike Wirth, chairman of the board and CEO of Chevron, which is possibly the single largest producer of greenhouse gases in the world. And Warren Buffett owns what, $25 billion worth of stock in Chevron? Know these people. They're murdering the planet. When you can't breathe because of the forest fires, it is the fault of the aptly named Larry Fink. Larry Fink, whose Blackstone private equity group has invested close to $100 billion in fossil fuels, proudly so. And your pensions, a lot of your pensions are with the Blackstone equity group. They're investing your pensions in companies that are killing us. Who else is to blame for the death of our planet? Well, according to The Guardian, Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook. He's one of the world's largest culprits in destroying the planet, according to Guardian, because he earns billions in advertising from fossil fuel companies, and he allows lies about climate change to spread throughout his platform. And of course, Rupert Murdoch, who, when he's not destroying democracy here in America, earns billions using his media platforms to deny climate science. These are the people. These are the people who are destroying the planet. You need to know their names. They're murderers. They're killing our planet. As I mentioned earlier, America's Justice Department is coming for Donald Trump. On Monday, the special counsel looking into Donald Trump's criminal behavior met with Trump's lawyers to inform them that Trump is the target of a special investigation. This is serious stuff when you're the target. Trump is not being subpoenaed because targets are just indicted and then arrested, and deals are being made as we speak. There is reporting in the British newspaper, The Independent, that Donald Trump will be indicted as early as today, Thursday. Andrew Feinberg, writing in The Independent, reports that the Justice Department is prepared to indict Donald Trump on obstruction, and violating the Espionage Act for his mishandling of 300 documents marked classified that he took back to Mar-a-Lago after leaving the White House. It is being reported in The Independent that the grand jury in Washington, D.C. will be asked to vote on an indictment, possibly today. The Justice Department is reportedly asking this grand jury to indict Trump not for mishandling, quote unquote, classified documents. They want to expunge the word classified documents from the indictment. The Justice Department is reportedly not going to say they had a problem with classified documents. The Justice Department instead wants to charge Donald Trump with violating U.S. criminal codes that prohibit anyone, even an ex-president, from mishandling, losing, or even handing over to third parties documents that are essential to America's defense, regardless of whether or not they are classified or declassified. The Independent is reporting that this kind of move, by taking the word classified out of the indictment, by expunging the word indictment, the prosecutors will make it impossible for Trump's lawyers to argue that he had declassified the documents and therefore could do with them what he wanted. The Justice Department is reportedly going to say, classified or not, these documents did not belong in a basement at Mar-a-Lago and that they were essential to our national defense. Trump, for this violation alone, could face up to 10 years in prison. A grand jury in Florida has also been convened. There is also reporting that Trump's last chief of staff, Mark Meadows, who left Congress to take the job of chief of staff for Donald Trump. He is one of the founding members of the Freedom Caucus. Mark Meadows, one of the most reprehensible, slimy people in Washington, D.C., he has reportedly testified before one of those grand juries about the classified documents and how they ended up in Mar-a-Lago. He was Trump's last chief of staff, so he has to explain to the National Archives how those boxes left the White House and went to Florida. The word is that he's a rat, as Donald Trump would call him. The word is that Mark Meadows flipped. There are reports that Mark Meadows has flipped, will plead guilty to some lesser charges in order to help Jack Smith prosecute Donald Trump. However, lawyers for Mark Meadows late Wednesday night told Newsweek that reports of Meadows becoming a witness for the prosecution are, quote, bullshit, unquote. The mishandling of these classified documents, some think, may be what puts Donald Trump in prison. We're talking violating the Espionage Act. Forget January 6th. Some legal scholars say the mishandling of these documents is what's going to be doing him in. Kind of like Al Capone and the taxes, it's going to be Donald Trump and the classified documents. There are reports that Steve Bannon, one of Trump's top White House and political advisors, has also testified before a Washington, D.C. grand jury looking into Trump's attempts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. So, it has been a given up until today that Trump's going to win the Republican nomination, that it's a foregone conclusion. 10 candidates are now in the race for the Republican nomination. And for the first time, we are beginning to see Republican candidates stepping up and saying Trump is unfit to serve as president. Mike Pence, on Wednesday in declaring his candidacy, said Donald Trump does not obey the American Constitution and he does not obey conservative principles. Pence, of course, we think, doesn't stand a chance. But neither did a former white-haired vice president back in 2020. He didn't stand a chance, and now he's sitting in the Oval Office. His name is Joe Biden. Now, Chris Christie entered the race on Tuesday, and he's taking on Trump. He said before he declared that he would never vote for Donald Trump, even if he's the Republican nominee. Chris Christie says he will not vote for Donald Trump. People are beginning to stand up to Donald Trump. Here is Chris Christie, Tuesday in New Hampshire, taking questions right after announcing that he is a candidate, that he's running against Trump. Here's Chris Christie.
The grift from this family is breathtaking. It's breathtaking. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Kushner walk out of the White House and months later get $2 billion from the Saudis. $2 billion from the Saudis. You think it's because he's some kind of investing genius? Or do you think it's because he was sitting next to the President of the United States for 4 years doing favors for the Saudis? That's your money. That's your money he stole and gave it to his family. You know what that makes us? A banana republic. That's what it makes us.
Now, here's the problem with Chris Christie. He knew this in 2016. He knew exactly who Donald Trump was, and he knew who Jared Kushner was because he put Jared Kushner's father in prison. And because he put Jared Kushner's father in prison, Chris Christie was never welcomed into the White House. No job for Attorney General. He was allowed to help Trump prep for debates. He was able to get Trump on the phone. But Jared Kushner never forgot that Chris Christie, as a federal prosecutor, locked his dad up. So Chris Christie was locked out of the White House. And that's why he's angry, because Chris Christie became Donald Trump's lapdog right after Chris Christie came in sixth in the New Hampshire primary. He became one of his biggest supporters. And Chris Christie, right after Donald Trump stole the 2016 election, Donald Trump put him in charge of the transition from the Obama administration to the Trump administration. And you need money to do that. You have to set up offices and prepare the new administration. And there was, I don't know, close to $100 million. And Chris Christie called Donald Trump to discuss the transition. And when Trump found out that there was $100 million sitting there for the transition, he screamed at Chris Christie, "That's my money. Give me that money. It belongs to me. I don't need anybody planning for our transition into the White House." Chris Christie always knew from the beginning who Donald Trump is. He is going after Trump because Trump slighted him. He didn't get to play in the Trump White House. That's why he's angry. He helped Donald Trump through, he caught COVID in 2020 doing debate prep with Donald Trump. And now, all of a sudden, Ivanka and Jared are grifters? You suddenly discovered that? You're not fit to hold elective office, Chris Christie, if you've suddenly discovered that Donald Trump is a grifter. Where were you in 2016 when you had to drop out and you endorsed Donald Trump? Bad guy, Chris Christie. Really, really bad guy. Now, it is received wisdom that should Trump get indicted, and it may, I mean, he's already been indicted by the Manhattan DA and fingerprinted, and we may be looking at mugshots in a few hours. It is received wisdom that if Trump gets indicted, he might have to drop out. And who would be the front runner? The Marquis DeSantis, Ron DeSantis, they say would be the front runner because the polling shows DeSantis running second to Trump. But do we really know that if Trump is out of the picture, DeSantis is the front runner? I haven't seen any polling with Trump taken out of the picture. Trump is a divisive figure who has his core supporters in the Republican Party. And the same applies to Ron DeSantis. DeSantis, he's not beloved in the Republican Party. So what if Trump has to drop out? And DeSantis, what? He initially will become the front runner because he's polling, 25%? He's got 25% of the vote. But that leaves quite an opportunity for another Republican. I don't know who, maybe Mike Pence. As reprehensible as Mike Pence is, maybe Mike Pence can win in Iowa. You know, Rick Santorum won Iowa. Rick Santorum, a lot like Mike Pence. Rick Santorum, anti-abortion. This is the guy who brought, I'm not making this up, Rick Santorum, senator from Pennsylvania, won the Iowa caucus in 2012. This is a guy who brought a miscarriage home and dressed it up and had his kids play with it before it was buried. So there are deeply disturbed religious people in Iowa who, the same people who voted for Rick Santorum, they'll vote for Mike Pence, and then he goes into New Hampshire. So don't count Mike Pence out. As horrible and homophobic and dangerous as he is, compared to Trump, he's perceived as an establishment Republican, a moderate. You may see Pence, the vice president, he was the vice president, that carries a lot of weight. You may see Pence move ahead of Ron DeSantis. I think a lot of people dislike Ron DeSantis in the Republican Party because he's a failure. And then, of course, somebody else might jump in to the race. I don't know. DeSantis is not automatically the front runner. He has made some egregious mistakes that are stupid and nasty and stupid. Take the migrant issue. Now, he wanted to be tough on the border, and he wanted to pull off a political stunt, but he couldn't find any migrants in Florida. So what did he do? He used Florida's tax dollars and sent operatives, political operatives, into Texas. And Ron DeSantis's operatives from Florida rounded up unsuspecting Central American migrants, promised them work and housing, and then boarded them on a plane and shipped them off to Martha's Vineyard. It was a political stunt, and he left them completely on their own. It was the height of cruelty to take the most vulnerable, the weakest, and use them as pawns, a political stunt. This is what Ron DeSantis does. He takes migrants and beats up on them, and he transgender minors, the LGBTQ community, people who are trying to love and live. He is a detestable, Ron Detestable. He's a detestable monster. And now he's doing the same thing with California. He's rounding up migrants in Texas because he can't find any in Florida, and he's shipping them off to Sacramento. That can't be illegal. In fact, there's a sheriff in Texas who was recommended to the DA in San Antonio that they press charges against either Ron DeSantis or the political operatives from Florida for kidnapping migrants. There are reports also that the California Attorney General, Rob Bonda, is investigating to see if these Florida operatives can be charged with kidnapping because these Florida operatives are taking migrants in Texas and sending them to California. California Governor Gavin Newsom appears on NBC's Today Show Thursday morning. We have a sneak preview. Here is Democrat California Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, Gavin Newsom called Ron DeSantis a small, angry little man. And he was asked if he wants to take that back, because it is impolite to call Ron DeSantis a small, little, angry man. Here is Governor Gavin Newsom of California.
I think I'm being generous, small, and pathetic. Very generous. He's just weakness masquerading as strength. Yeah, he's flailing.
He's flailing. And then Gavin Newsom explained how really this is the best explanation I've heard of how truly unchristian Ron DeSantis is to take these migrants. This is Gavin Newsom just laying it all out there, the cruelty, the sadism of Ron, the Marquis DeSantis.
Here's a governor from the state of Florida that is using taxpayer money, and he had to go to another state to find people under false pretense. I don't think this, I know this. I talked to the migrants, lied to them, took them into another state by bus, and then took them on a chartered flight to Sacramento, lying to them that they had help on the other side, knocked on the door, and they left these migrants right there on the steps. What kind of human being does that?
What kind of human being does that? I mean, that is the question. How do you have a political party that gets almost half the country to celebrate torturing migrants? This is not Christian. This is not acceptable in any religion.
By the way, I didn't take this in the third party frame. I was there with these folks directly and listened to how human beings used as pawns for a guy's political advancement. That's pretty sad and pathetic. And so I take this very seriously. And as I said, we are not Martha's Vineyard. I love Martha's Vineyard. We're not Martha. This is California, fourth or fifth largest economy on planet Earth. We mean business. And so Ron DeSantis should know that. And everyone that's been part of this, they may have more direct accountability and culpability, should know we mean business, and we're not backing away from getting the facts and holding those accountable if they broke the laws of the state of California.
This level of cruelty is so egregious, especially when you walk through New York City and you realize how fragile the planet is, and that we may not be able to live where we're living right now because of climate catastrophe. We could end up being the migrants, Ron DeSantis. In fact, your state of Florida is very susceptible to hurricanes, the same way Puerto Rico is. And the millions and millions of people who live in Florida, Ron DeSantis, who support you, they're one bad hurricane, one wildfire away from being migrants themselves. I don't know what good books you read, but karma teaches us that for our own safety, we should be nicer to these migrants. Or get off fossil fuels. because if you don't get off fossil fuels, we're going to be in the same boat as the boat people. These are bad times. These are really bad times. I went outside today briefly, and it's like end times. We have to be nice to people, but not the people who are killing us. There are bad, bad people in America who run the oil companies. They are bad, and they are murdering us. We have to register to vote and take this country back. The clock is ticking. Get angry. Peaceful protest, but get angry. Register to vote. The fossil fuel industry, like the health insurance companies, have to be put out of business. And anybody who says otherwise is a con artist. So they bring up other things. They demonize the LGBTQ community. They have to create phony demons. There are demons in America. They are the people who run Exxon and Chevron, the people who own stock in Exxon and Chevron. These are the demons, not the LGBTQ community. There are demons among us. They are the for-profit health insurance company executives. Those are the evil, vile, despicable creatures who need to be put out of business. But you have an entire party, the Republicans, that is dedicated to making these companies more profitable. So they have to channel everybody's anger and fear towards someone. So they pick transgender minors. They pick the LGBTQ community. They find the most vulnerable people, migrants, and they demonize them because they're malicious, vile bullies. So get angry. Things can get a lot worse if you don't get angry and fight these bullies. And if you know anybody who is a member of the LGBTQ community, show them love. It is a state of emergency right now. We are in a state of emergency for the LGBTQ community because evil people need scapegoats. They cannot deliver. They cannot fix the climate. They cannot help us with the eviction crisis. They cannot do anything for us. All they can do is help the oil companies, the drug companies, and the health insurance companies, and try to get us to hate the LGBTQ community. That's their plan. So if you know anybody who is in the member of the LGBTQ community, call them, make sure they're okay. Time now for the Hirschenfelds. Dr. Philip Hirschenfeld is a real psychiatrist, a real Freudian psychiatrist, the real deal, Freudian. Ethan Hirschenfeld is a comedian and the author of Today Is Now, and we're not sure. Maybe he's a psychiatrist through osmosis?
The character, the protagonist of Today Is Now, the mockumentary, and the author of Today Is Now, the book, is Dr. Samuel Benjamin. And he is not a Freudian, he is a Fraudian. As we coined that last week. So we're going to stick with that.
Ethan Hirschenfeld is coming to us tonight from beautiful Cape Cod. And Dr. Hirschenfeld is coming to us somewhere on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Also beautiful.
Yeah.
Also beautiful. I want to just say, I'm sitting next to this garden, which for the 3 summers of the pandemic, I tended, but you can see now it's fallow. And I think that there's a biblical admonition to let the garden, you got to let the land every 7 years. You got to give it a rest. Is that right?
This is only 3 years.
Well, it's 3.5. It's a 50% discount off the biblical thing. It's for it's religious, lazy people. So every 3 years you take a year off.
But my understanding is back during the Bible, when it was being written, they didn't understand about rotating crops.
They didn't understand rotating crops or carrying the two. So they were terrible at math. So 7, which is a prime number, it was very confusing. And then they chose all these things in the Bible that were 7s, and their math skills were really terrible.
Is that true? They didn't know how to carry the 2?
They couldn't carry the 2.
They were so busy.
Anything.
They were carrying the Torah.
Exactly.
They didn't have time. You have to bend your knees when you're carrying it. Is that really true that they didn't know about carrying the 2, and that's why the 7 is so important?
They didn't know long division. They knew very, very long division. This division is going on forever. No, I don't know. I think they probably did know math. They had to know math because they were building pyramids, although they weren't built. They were just like the hired hands. They weren't really planning the pyramids.
Yeah, but calendars were very important.
Right.
You need math for the calendars. You need math for the stars, the moon.
Yeah. Now, was that day at a glance or generation at a glance? What was that back in the biblical times?
Yes.
So according to the book of Exodus, the Jews were the laborers, the masons who built the pyramids?
Yeah, what do you think? Where you been all these years?
They actually worked with their hands and took orders. Really?
Well, they took orders, and then till they didn't. They escaped.
Now, Sigmund Freud, I believed that did he maintain that the Jews who left Egypt and moved to Canaan were different from the Jews who came to Egypt? That there were 2 separate types of Jews. That the Jews who Moses led were not really the original, the OGs. They were different.
It was really divided into. It's like on a track team. There's the sprinters and the distance runners. So the ones who left they were selected for their stamina, and.
But is that in Moses and monotheism? Did he opine that possibly Moses was not related in any way?
Was an Egyptian prince. That's what he opined. Yes.
Which we do, and so the people he brought to Israel could not trace their genealogy back to the original Abrahamic Jews. Is that what Freud said?
I don't really remember. But you know what? I don't.
Finally, you admit that instead of making up some
So make something. So you make something up, Ethan. Since you're so, what did Freud say?
So what's Sigmund Freud's point was that on the journey out of bondage and out of Egypt towards Canaan, there was. Not only was there no checked luggage allowed, but you weren't even allowed a carry-on. And these people, they had a lot of stuff with them. So, and in fact, the Jews, they said, no, we're not leaving. We need our stuff. We need have you seen the thread count on these sheets? We're not leaving it.
We need our baby grand pianos. We need.
Yeah. And it doesn't sound right on an upright. So we're taking, so he just had to take some locals with him. Some basically background actors, local background actors who were willing to put on the payas and like in a bad movie.
All right.
By the way, when you said they fled to Canaan, it sounded like Connecticut.
Or New Canaan.
Oh, New Canaan. That's right. Yeah.
And what is the link between canine and Canaan? I've always wanted to ask fake Dr. Ethan Hirschenfeld, because he loves dogs.
Loves dogs.
And you're familiar with Canaan, which is one of the original names of Samaria, which is also...
There's a Canaanite dog also, a breed of dogs.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's a poodle mix, like everything is. It's a...
I think it's a hound.
Oh, it's a hound.
So
but I don't know for sure. I'm turning over a new leaf. Thanks to over 50 years of pestering by my young colleague here, I finally learned how to say, I don't know.
Which is almost as good as we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see is, did the Jews invent we'll see? Because
that's not how you pronounced it in ancient Aramaic. Yes, they did invent it, but the way you pronounce that in ancient Aramaic is, That's the.
Now, did I dream this? Because we'll see. I was raised with "we'll see."
Because people were afraid to say no.
Well, I think you used to do that also. That was your go-to line. Dad, you would say, we'll see, if there was something that you didn't want to do, that you didn't want to say no.
No, I didn't want to say no. I wanted to coddle the kinder, which is not a good approach.
Coddle the Kindle. Coddle the Kinder sounds like a great name for a book. Coddle the Kinder.
Or a Gershwin tune.
Did I imagine this? Did I dream this, or is this true?
I had one of those today also. I had a thing. I don't know if I had this actual interaction or if I dreamed it. I want to hear what yours was.
Okay. So I remember an unholy alliance made between Jerry Falwell and the Menachem Begin wing of not the Irgun, but the
political party, the Likud.
The Likud party, which is rooted, I think, to the Irgun and Menachem Begin, and he was far right, and he was a
terrorist. Yes,
he was a terrorist, and he made some kind of unholy alliance between the far right here in the United States when Reagan was running for president, I believe, with Jerry Falwell. And I don't know if I dreamt this or if Menachem Begin actually said this. He said that he was asked, how could you make an alliance with these evangelicals, with Jerry Falwell? He hates Jews, and the only reason he wants to protect Israel is because he wants to set the stage for the second coming, which doesn't include you. And Menachem Begin said, we'll see. Did I dream that? Or does anybody remember him actually?
It's a good line.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Jesus comes. We'll see.
You know, I'm remembering now in those years in the 70s when these people were in my consciousness. So my father's father, Gerald, he would wear these big, he had sort of dark, he had glasses. I remember some sort of glasses now that I'm thinking of it, when that movie Oh God came out with George Burns, I really associated George Burns and your father, Gerald, my grandfather. And then also Menachem Begin also had those glasses.
Right.
The three of them, there was Menachem Begin, George Burns as God, and my grandfather. And then also the guy who then really brought those back was the guy who plays Larry David's dad.
Shelley Berman. Shelley Berman. Yeah.
Those giant square glasses.
But what happens is, as one gets older, I don't know if it's happened, it must be happening to me too, the fat in your face sort of melts away and some of the muscles. So your face gets smaller and the glasses magnify your eyes, and they all have this same look.
The glasses don't get bigger, the head gets smaller.
It's smaller, yeah.
Wow. Now I have something about for self-hating Jews in America. Menachem Begin was, if you were of a certain age, was kind of an embarrassment. He reminded certain baby boomer Jews of Grandpa Gerald. But Benjamin Netanyahu came along, during the first Gulf War, and he was a matinee star. He was a matinee idol. He would go on all CNN. They couldn't wait to talk to Benjamin Netanyahu about Saddam Hussein and Israel, because Benjamin Netanyahu spoke like a British Jew who lived in Israel, and all the American Jews said,
Meanwhile, it's a pretentious, put on, phony baloney, macho, fake erudite accent. He talks like this. I'm Benjamin Netanyahu, and I'm telling you that Israel, it's like a fake. It's just total bullshit. He's bullshit. This whole thing is bullshit. It's like a non-Israeli accent, a non-English accent, and he makes it a little too deep. It's you can tell he doesn't really speak like that when he's at home and he's ordering his ice cream. It's a much higher voice. Say, honey, can you bring the pistachio? And then he goes on CNN and he talks like this. He's such an unsavory.
And Reagan, even though he was this little guy and the wrong accent, he had more character in his little pinky than this jerk had in his whole body.
Right. And there was no PR with a guy like Reagan. He was just with his Polish accented Hebrew. He was 100% shtetl all the time, but then shtetl plus terrorist, like shtetl terrorist.
Right. And he's beloved here in the United States. If you're listening overseas, anytime you get on the road, there's always a Begin Highway. They've named the Begin Highway after Menachem. The thing about the imitation that you did of Benjamin Netanyahu sounds exactly like Sammy Davis Jr. or Jerry Lewis when they're trying to be smart. It's that stilted, fake.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's very square. It's
yeah.
The other prime minister I like to impersonate was Yitzhak Rabin. Yitzhak Rabin would talk like this. And
or Shimon Peres.
Well, Perez also. It's the same. Right? But I like to do Rabin. About 10 years ago, I had one impersonation. In my stand-up act. It was short, and it's like apologies. Like, I guess Zach Galifianakis would do these very short impersonations. He would say like, "This is a toddler with a beard." Did you ever hear him do that impersonation?
No.
So Zach Galifianakis would say, "This is my impersonation of a toddler with a beard," and he would say, "My beard hurts." That was the whole impersonation.
You should go ahead.
This was my Rabin. So this was my Rabin on a cruise ship. Yitzhak Rabin. We will not negotiate with terrorists. It's a niche impersonation. No one wants to hear your Rabin. If you have that in your bag of tricks, useless.
Well, you should do Rabin.
This reminds me, folks, of I went to the opera last night to see the Magic Flute, which I saw Ethan in La Fenice, one of the premier opera houses in the world.
In Las Vegas.
The Venetian.
Oh, yeah. No, it was the one. Yeah.
And at least to my hearing, I'm not such a tutored opera goer, but the guy who did it at the Met last night, he was good. But I think that he couldn't quite reach the lowest of the lowest notes that Ethan would always reach. And I think what they did is they sort of disguised his lowest notes with some horn blowing.
Flatulence.
So
that's an old trick. That's an old trick from the Wiener Staatsoper. Low note, flatulence. It's well known.
Now, what
began with Mozart?
Let me ask your alter ego.
Yeah.
What does it mean when a father says you are the lowest of the low? What is he trying to say?
It's important to realize that as unable as a child is to be objective about their parents, even more so is the parent unable to be objective about the child. So when you hear a parent say that when they heard their son do X, Y, and Z, or saw him do this or that, and it was just incredible, you got to take that with a grain of paternal or maternal salt.
Mm-hmm.
Like
David, it was incredible.
Also,
So much better than Ethan. You don't want to say it, but you were going, this guy can hit the low notes, but you felt guilty. So I see.
I also want to say, if you need evidence of this, just go into anyone's house and look at the refrigerator and look at the art on the refrigerator.
Right.
Whose kids are the artists?
Exactly.
They don't, it's clearly subjective. There's no.
You know what I do? Go ahead, Dr. Hirschenfeld.
So when my friend Salvatore and I went to Venice just to hear this opera, and Ethan got me a seat in the second row, and I was sitting with the top of the line Venetians in gowns and
Pizza making hats.
Were they tossing dough while they were watching you? Really?
There were two ladies sitting next to me. And at one point, when Zoroastro, Ethan's character, started singing in this magnificent bass voice, I say to this lady next to me, "Do you understand English?" And she says, "Yeah, a little." I say, "I am Zoroastro's father." He moves away from me.
Really? Now, is Zoroaster, would that be the monotheistic Zoroastrian god?
I should know the answer to that.
Mozart came up with.
Yeah, it's not actually, it's Sarastro, not Zoroastro. It's a little bit different, but who knows? It's sort of a mishmash of.
So she wasn't impressed that.
She thought I was nuts until her friend next to her, who understood English a little better, explained to her what I had meant. So we all settled down.
Now, in terms of happy moments, being in Venice, were you aware, Ethan, that this was one of the highlights of your life, or did you think?
I knew it was it was great, but was I happy? It is a lesson in I don't know what it's a lesson in, but no, I was stressed. I was very ambitious at that point.
You were young.
35 or 36, and this was the pinnacle of so far of what I'd achieved. Maybe it ended up being the pinnacle, singing wise. All I was thinking about was pushing, just kvetching to my agents, what's the next thing?
Uh-huh.
What are we going to do with this? How are we going to leverage this to something even better?
Right.
It was possessed. And in fact, I was talking to the doctor this week about kind of grappling with I don't know where that engine of self-promotion and that fire of ambition, where it's gone or what's going on with it. I had the feeling that it was related to the pandemic and being out of the grind for a while. I don't know what. It hasn't quite returned. It could be an age thing.
No, I think most Americans are I'm experiencing that, where all the external things that made us feel good, we kind of now see through, perhaps.
I think there's some of that. I mean, for me, like I still am doing all these auditions and, like for the acting stuff. And so that hasn't changed, but, and I'm still ambitious there, but it's, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Where does a psychiatrist, go ahead, doctor.
Hold it, David. Ask me the same question, please.
Well, I was going to ask you a similar question, but I'll ask you the same question. Do you have the same drive, the same need?
No, that's not the question. The question you asked him was that one of the high points of your life? Ask me that question.
Sitting in an audience
Oh, Jesus.
on your ass, doing absolutely nothing in Venice, watching your son sing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But you did nothing. You're not singing.
nothing.
You're not nervous. You've got no skin in the game.
Yeah, but he
Oh,
flew all the way there. That was great. He flew all the way there.
You
My
flew
mom
all
also,
the wa-
incidentally, my mom also flew over.
You had to pay for a hotel. You had to pay for a flight. You were probably going to have to pick up a couple of
We
meals.
slept in a gondola, actually.
You what?
We slept in a gondola.
My goal in life is to remarry and fight with my loved one on a gondola in Venice, to break up. I
once had a situation like that in Venice. It was a real terrible relationship moment several years before that job. So yeah, a lot of people break up in Venice. That's the main.
But on a gondola, I'd like to tell the little man on the boat to shut the hell up.
Or sing a breakup song.
I'd have two little men in the boat. So that was one of your happiest moments, Dr. Hirschfeld?
Yeah.
Watching your son succeed.
Yeah.
So
Well, that makes it seem like, now I gotta have kids. Ugh.
So you're put on this earth to please your father.
Well, or you gotta then, I think I just gotta have kids now and wait 20 years and then.
Now, would
go
you
to
have the
Wisconsin.
same? Can I ask you a personal question, Dr. Hirschfeld?
Why should this night be different than any other?
So your son is being spectacular, singing in the opera in Venice.
That's the word.
Okay. Suppose instead he called you and said, I am so happy. And you'd say, why? And he'd say, I don't know, but I'm happy. I've been happy all day. I haven't had a care in the world. I'm not drinking. I'm not smoking anything. I'm out in nature. I just feel so connected to the universe. Would that make you as happy and proud?
It would certainly make me very happy, but I think it's a different kind of happiness.
Well, the first one maybe is more. That's a very good question. I like that question. The first one maybe is more egoic.
Yeah, narcissistic.
There's a little bit of that,
Absolutely.
but not to put it down. It's
if I called my parents, if I called my father, and I said, Dad, I got great news. He'd go, yeah, I'm happy today.
Yeah.
I ate some French toast today and some memories washed over me, and I'm just sitting on the couch looking at the window, and I am happy. And he'd say, should we get you into a mental institution? Do you need help? Why are you telling me this?
But here, let me confirm some of these observations about the narcissistic aspect of it, because I have told the Venice story literally hundreds of times, and now I've told it to your 80,000 watchers, it's including all those people, down under. But if he called me up and said, I am really happy today, I would be very happy, but I wouldn't go around telling people. I mean, what would be the point of that?
So when parents go out and brag about their kids,
Right. Yeah.
they are really bragging about.
I wouldn't say really, but that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of it.
I always say to people, brag to me about your kids. I always like to hear people brag about their kids.
Oh, that reminds me. Anyone who's watching this, David, Doctor, the audience, you have to watch the new season of Adam Robinson's sketch show on Netflix called I Wish You Would Leave. This is season 3, and one of the episodes is about a guy at a party who's just admonishing another guy played by Jason Schwartzman to stop talking about his kids at the party, to just try to not talk about your kids. This sketch show is incredible.
Okay, what's it called? I Wish You Would Leave.
I Wish you would leave.
Now,
I wish you would leave
now
on
is
Netflix.
Is Jason Schwartzman, is this the Coppola kid? The mother was Connie?
I don't know which, but yeah, he's that kid. Yeah. He's from what was that amazing movie where he was a kid, Rushmore.
Okay, so imagine having Sofia Coppola as a cousin, Francis Ford Coppola as an uncle, Carmine Coppola, the great conductor, as a grandfather, Connie, she was Connie from The Godfather, Adrian from Rocky.
Yeah.
Talia Shire.
Shire, right, yeah.
Imagine trying to live up to that family.
Well, he's amazing. He's just so funny, this guy.
Yeah, but that's just one part of it. The other part of it is it's the family business.
Right.
You know people who've done it, and you think, hey, I can do it too.
Absolutely. That's a big advantage.
Yeah, but here it is. My uncle is Francis Ford Coppola. My mother played Connie in The Godfather and was Adrian. And I'm a Schwartzman.
Well, all day, any day, he could have taken a stage name for sure.
I know, but I'm a Schwartzman. I know. That's good for him.
I respect.
Good for him. Yeah.
Yes, good for him. Hey,
you wanted
ahead.
to talk about vaping?
I wanted to talk about. We had one of my listeners had a question about vaping. He says that there's a little nicotine that he quit smoking, and that it's negligible, but that he gets much joy from the hand to mouth, not hand to God, hand to mouth. Right. That there's something about the hand to mouth activity that brings him much pleasure.
I'm going to give him a recommendation. This is very bizarre. In my book, Today Is Now by Dr. Samuel Benjamin, he actually advocates pretending to smoke a cigarette. You can go outside and take a fake smoke break. You actually you mime through the whole thing, including the lighter, and you stand there, you lean against the building, you can tip your hat. You do the whole thing. You slowly take a few minutes to smoke the whole cigarette, enjoy it, and what you're doing is you're taking these deep breaths. Hand to mouth. I was reading another self-help book by this Margie Haber, who has the acting school I did the workshop at back in April. She literally has the same suggestion in her book. I couldn't believe it. So that's like, synchronicity, whatever that is. So I'm saying your listeners should try that. It's a lot. It's cheaper and a little bit safer, depending on where your fingers have been. Safer than vaping.
There is something about the whole ritual of smoking, opening the new pack, tamping it down, taking the cigarette out.
Yeah.
It's all part of the smoking, and it's all very important.
And you can do all of that stuff. I'm glad you brought that up as part of it. If you really want to try this just as a miming exercise and a breathing exercise, act out all of that stuff. I think it can be equally satisfying.
Or you could do it with a pen or a pencil.
You could, yeah.
And forgive me for asking this question.
Oral fixation?
What is that? Yeah, forgive me. Let me get the answer from the fake doctor first.
Why should we forgive you for anything?
Freud smoked cigars. In fact, he died. He died. It killed him. Yeah. So there are these in Freudian
psychoanalysis, the idea is that there are these various stages of psychosexual development, and there's always the possibility of, instead of moving through them in a healthy manner, you can end up sort of stuck or fixated, as they say, in one or various of these things. And basically, in going through them, the taxonomy of those stages, basically pick a hole, any hole. Gotcha. You got your oral phase, you got your anal phase, you got your in this hole, out that hole. It's just pick a hole. It's like a 9-hole golf course. So that's basically what they're saying. And oral fixation is someone, for some reason, during the breastfeeding or whatever it was, they got a little bit too attached to that whole experience. So they're the rest of their life, they're sucking on things, they're spitting, they're talking too much, they're eating too much, they're licking their lips, they're smacking their lips, they're picking their teeth, they're becoming dentists. They're becoming
wow.
Many years ago, a woman came for therapy because she wanted to help losing weight. And she ate too much. She drank too much. She smoked too much. She talked too much. She was eventually able to lose weight. But every session, she would mention eating multiple times. I went out to dinner with this one. This is what we had for dinner. I had this for breakfast. I mean, she couldn't get it out of her mind.
Did you ever?
So that would be an oral fixation.
Yeah.
So is it fair? But hold your thought here for 1 second, Ethan. Can you remember what you were going to say?
Yeah.
Don't forget. So I understand this. Or something might have happened while they were breastfeeding or wanting to be breastfed.
Either you were underindulged or overindulged. They very often lead to the same final common pathway. But if you had a mother who was constantly stuffing stuff in your mouth, or if you were left alone in your crib, starving and not getting enough nourishment, they could all lead to that. Or if during the oral phase there is some kind of an other trauma, you could get stuck there. And I have got to stop speaking now because I have a course to teach.
Okay.
So goodbye and good luck, everybody.
This was really interesting. Let me ask Ethan a question that...
I'm sorry he isn't here to hear my analysis, because it's nice when he can. But what I was going to say was the one element in his treatment of that patient, which he might not have considered, is that he was seeing her during the noontime hour, which was his lunch hour. So in every session, he was eating a meatball hero. So, yeah, no wonder she was hungry.
All right, so you say 9 holes. Is that how many holes?
That's is this the menorah thing?
No, I'm just curious. Are there 9 holes that we can get fixed?
No, so in golf there's 18, but if you play half a round, that's 9 holes. But in the human body, there's I think someone said that, like, anthropologically, it's like the menorah. There's like 7. So someone was saying that actually the menorah sort of evolved from a sculpture of a human head, because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 holes. So you could see how a sculpture of a human head could then turn into like a menorah with like 6 plus 1. Anyway,
well, how many candles on a menorah?
I think that's 7 plus 1.
7 plus 1. That sounds like my dinner reservation.
Yeah, we're back to the math thing. We're terrible at math.
Okay, so now wait a second. Is there a nasal fixation?
I think there is. And in fact, that was a whole area of research and inquiry and writing early on. This is no joke. Early on in Freud's career.
Are you being serious?
This is serious. There was another guy whose name is slipping my mind, who he was involved with, who really thought that a whole lot of the, like last week he was talking about how hysteria, there was that idea that it had to do with the floating womb. there was an idea that something with the sense of smell and up there in the nasal passages was a source of a lot of neurosis. Let's ask.
And he had a cocaine. Didn't he snort cocaine?
Exactly. Yeah. He had a whole nose thing himself. Yeah.
And it maybe
Fliess. That's who it was. It was Wilhelm Fliess. That was the guy's name. He had a whole nose area of research. This is all in like the roots of psychoanalysis. They were just guessing. They were trying to figure it out, I think.
Wow.
Wilhelm Fliess. I'm going to see if I'm right about this. It says German psychoanalyst, 1858, played an important part in the prehistory of psychoanalysis. Yeah, and look at that. Wilhelm Fliess was an otolaryngologist, so he was an ear, nose, and throat doctor. So this is real. So he developed this pseudoscientific theory. Yeah, it had to do with the nose. Yeah.
And did he give nose?
This is what it was called. His theory of the reflex nasal neuroses. Yeah. We can ask the doctor about that next week.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So theoretically, a nose job is good for your mental health, maybe. It's like a lobotomy.
As long as it comes out good. Yeah.
Ethan Hirschenfeld, stay with me for one quick second.
Okay.
Amazing.